What if I told you that two pensioners in the UK who worked the same number of years, paid the same national insurance, and live on the same street can be separated by almost £3,000 a year simply because one of them was born a few years earlier? No mistake, no penalty, no appeal, just a date of birth. Right now, under the two-tier system created in 2016, pensioners on the old basic state pension can receive thousands less than those on the new state pension, and the gap is actually widening every year because of how the triple lock works. And here's the part nobody is talking about. Hundreds of thousands of over-75s could be entitled to extra money right now through pension credit, but they are not claiming it. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly where the £2,932 gap comes from, why it keeps growing, how the winter fuel payment changes made things worse, and most importantly, what you can actually do about it. Stay with me until the end, because the final section could mean hundreds, even thousands of pounds back into your pocket or someone you love. If you care about protecting your pension, your parents' income, or your own financial future in retirement, this channel was built for you. Not for politicians, not for corporations. For ordinary people who worked hard and just want what they are entitled to. Every single week, I break down complicated government changes, from state pension updates to DWP rule changes, benefit entitlements, winter fuel payment reforms, and hidden money most people don't even know they can claim. And over the next few videos, I'll be uploading a full breakdown of how to maximize your pension credit claim, a step-by-step guide to checking your national insurance gaps, the truth about future triple lock changes, and what could happen next to the two-tier pension system. If that matters to you, and especially if you're over 60 or supporting someone who is, make sure you subscribe now, because this isn't just another news channel. This is about your income, your rights, your retirement, and I don't want you missing a single update that could put money back in your pocket. Let us start right at the very beginning, because to understand why this gap exists, you need to understand a little bit about how the state pension system in the United Kingdom actually works. Now, you might think a pension is a pension. You worked, you paid your national insurance contributions, and so the government pays you a set amount every week when you retire. Simple enough, right? Well, it used to be a bit like that, but over the years, the system has changed quite dramatically, and those changes are now creating two very different groups of pensioners living side by side. One group receiving significantly more money than the other, for no reason other than when they were born. Back in April 2016, the government introduced what they called the new state pension. This replaced the older system, which was made up of the basic state pension and something called the additional state pension, sometimes known as SERPs or S2P. The new state pension was designed to be simpler and, to be fair, more generous for many people. If you reach state pension age on or after the 6th of April 2016, you came under this new system. The full new state pension in 2026 is worth around £230 per week. That adds up to roughly £11,960 over the course of a full year. That is a substantial income, and while nobody is getting rich on it, it does provide a meaningful foundation for retirement. But here is where things get really important. If you reached state pension age before the 6th of April 2016, which means you are now, in 2026, aged around 75 or older, then you did not come under the new system. You are still on the old basic state pension, and the maximum you can receive under that system is around £177.45 per week. Now, I want you to just pause and let that sink in for a moment. £177.45 compared to £230. That is a difference of around £52.55 every single week. Multiply that out across 52 weeks of the year, and you are looking at a shortfall of approximately £2,732 to £2,932 per year, depending on the exact figures involved. Nearly £3,000. Gone, just because of when you were born. Now, some of you watching this might be thinking, well, surely that cannot be right. There must be something else to make up the difference. And to be fair, there are top-up benefits available, and we will get to those in a moment. But the raw numbers do not lie. Older pensioners, the people who have paid into this system the longest, the people who lived through rationing, who rebuilt this country after the war, who worked in jobs that were often physically grueling and paid very little, those very people are now receiving less from the state than someone who only recently retired. And for many of them, particularly those who are widowed, who live alone, or who have health conditions that mean they cannot supplement their income with part-time work, that gap is felt every single day. So where does this figure of £2,932 come from? Let us walk through the maths together so it is completely clear. The full new state pension in the 2026 to 2027 tax year is £230 per week. The maximum basic state pension, which is what pre-2016 retirees receive, is £177.45 per week. The difference between those two figures is £52.55 per week. Over a full 52-week year, that works out at £2,732.60. However, when you also factor in the uprating differences that have built up year on year through the triple lock, and we will explain exactly what that is shortly, the cumulative gap in what older pensioners have missed out on receiving since the new system came in pushes closer to that £2,932 annual figure. It is a staggering amount of money for anyone to be missing out on, but it is especially painful when you are living on a fixed income and every penny matters. Now, let us talk about the triple lock, because this is absolutely central to understanding this whole issue, and yet an awful lot of people, including many pensioners themselves, do not really know what it means or how it works. The triple lock is the government's commitment to increasing the state pension every year by whichever is the highest of three things: the rate of inflation as measured by the Consumer Price Index, the average growth in earnings across the UK, or 2.5%. The idea behind it was to ensure that pensioners do not fall further and further behind the rest of society as prices and wages go up. And when it works well. In years when wages have risen significantly, pensioners have seen their pensions go up by a healthy amount. In years of high inflation, the same principle applies. The problem, however, is that the triple lock applies to both the new state pension and the basic state pension. But because the new state pension started at a higher base figure, the same percentage increase produces a larger cash increase for those on the newer, higher pension. Think of it this way. If you apply a 10% increase to £230, you get £23 extra per week. But if you apply the same 10% to £177.45, you only get £17.74 extra per week. So the gap between the two pensions does not stay the same. It actually widens every single year that the triple lock delivers an increase. The older pensioners are not just behind, they are falling further behind with every passing year. This is a structural problem baked into the very design of the two-tier system, and it is one that the government has done very little to address. Let us also take a moment to think about who these over-75s actually are. Because sometimes, when we talk about pension policy, it can all feel very abstract and distant. The people affected by this gap are not statistics. They are real men and women, many of whom spent their entire working lives doing some of the hardest jobs imaginable. They worked down mines, on building sites, in factories, in the NHS as nurses and porters and cleaners. Many of them, particularly women, took time out of the workforce to raise children or care for elderly relatives, which means their contribution records might not be complete, so they are not even receiving the full basic state pension. They are getting something even less than the maximum. These are people in their late 70s, 80s, and beyond. Many of them have health conditions. Many of them are widows or widowers, and many of them are genuinely struggling to make ends meet. Not because they were feckless or irresponsible with money, but simply because the system has not kept pace with the cost of living, and because they retired before the more generous new rules came in. The Department for Work and Pensions, the DWP, is the government body responsible for pensions and benefits in the UK, and they have been remarkably quiet about this gap. There has been no major public information campaign aimed at letting older pensioners know that they may be missing out. There has been no proactive outreach to make sure that everyone entitled to a top-up is actually receiving one. And for people who are not online, who do not watch financial news programs, and who perhaps struggle to navigate government websites or fill in lengthy forms, the lack of communication from the DWP is not just unhelpful. It is, many campaigners would argue, a serious failure of duty of care. Now, you may well be asking at this point, is there anything that can actually top up the income of these older pensioners? The answer is yes, in theory, though the reality is far more complicated. The main benefit designed to help people on low incomes in retirement is called pension credit. Pension credit is a means-tested benefit that tops up your weekly income to a guaranteed minimum level. In 2026, the guaranteed minimum for a single person is around £218.15 per week, and for a couple, it is around £332.95 per week. On the surface, that sounds like it should close the gap quite nicely. But here is the thing. Around 1 in 3 people who are entitled to pension credit are not claiming it. Estimates suggest that somewhere between around 800,000 and 1 million pensioners in the UK are missing out on pension credit every year, leaving an enormous amount of unclaimed money sitting with the government rather than in the hands of the people who desperately need it. Why are so many people not claiming it? There are several reasons, and they all tend to interlock. First, there is the issue of stigma. Many older people, particularly those from the generation we are talking about, were raised with very strong values around self-sufficiency and independence. The idea of claiming a means-tested benefit, something that feels to them like charity or welfare, is deeply uncomfortable, even shameful, for a lot of people in this age group. They would rather go without than feel as though they are begging. This is a cultural attitude that has been very hard to shift, and frankly, successive governments have not done nearly enough to reframe pension credit as something that these individuals have earned the right to by virtue of a lifetime of work and tax contributions. Second, there is the complexity of the application process. Pension credit is not the easiest benefit to apply for. The forms are lengthy. The eligibility rules can be confusing. And for someone who is perhaps dealing with health issues, who may have some degree of cognitive decline, or who simply is not comfortable with paperwork or official government correspondence, the whole thing can feel overwhelming and, frankly, not worth the bother. The DWP does have a helpline, but getting through to a human being can take considerable time, and many older people are not confident using digital systems or the online application process. Third, there is a genuine lack of awareness. Surveys consistently show that large numbers of pensioners simply do not know that pension credit exists, or they have a vague idea of it but massively overestimate what their income or savings need to be in order to qualify. A lot of people assume that because they own their home, even a modest home, they would not be eligible. But owning your home does not automatically disqualify you from pension credit. A lot of people also assume that having a small private pension or a few £1,000s in savings would rule them out. But again, this is often not the case, especially for those over 75 who may also qualify for additional elements within pension credit, such as the savings credit component, which actually provides an extra reward for people who have put a little bit of money aside during their working lives. It is also worth noting that pension credit is not just about the money you receive directly. Qualifying for pension credit is what is called a passport benefit. It opens the door to a whole range of other financial support that can be hugely valuable. For instance, if you are on pension credit, you are entitled to a free TV license if you are aged over 75. That alone is worth over £170 per year. You may also be entitled to help with housing costs through housing benefit, help with council tax through your local authority, free NHS dental treatment, free sight tests, and help towards the cost of glasses. You may also get cold weather payments during periods of particularly cold weather, and the winter fuel payment rules, which have become somewhat complicated in recent years, have historically been linked to pension credit eligibility. When you add all of these additional entitlements together, the real-world financial value of claiming pension credit can be dramatically higher than just the weekly cash top-up figure alone. Let us now talk about something that caused quite a lot of controversy in recent years, which is the government's decision to change the rules around the winter fuel payment. Until fairly recently, the winter fuel payment was a universal payment. That is to say, every pensioner above a certain age received it automatically, regardless of their income or wealth. It was worth between £100 and £300 per year, depending on your age and circumstances. And for many pensioners, it made a real difference during the cold winter months, when energy bills are at their highest. However, the government announced that from the winter of 2024 onwards, the winter fuel payment would be means tested, meaning that only those on pension credit or certain other low-income benefits would continue to receive it. For over-75s on the basic state pension who are not claiming pension credit, and remember, that is a very large number of people, this represents yet another financial blow on top of the pension gap we have already been discussing. They have lost a universal payment they relied on, and if they are not claiming pension credit, they have no way of getting it back unless they go through the application process. The decision to means test the winter fuel payment was extremely controversial. Critics argued, with considerable force, that the very people most at risk from cold-related illness and death are older people, and that removing a universal payment that helped them heat their homes during winter was both financially short-sighted and morally indefensible. The government argued that the money saved could be redirected to those most in need, but given the huge number of eligible pensioners who are not claiming pension credit, the counter-argument is that means testing simply does not work effectively when take-up of qualifying benefits is so poor. You end up with a situation where a pensioner who is struggling but has not claimed pension credit falls through every safety net simultaneously: lower weekly pension, no winter fuel payment, no passport benefits, while someone on an identical income who did fill in the right forms gets the full package. The system rewards form filling rather than need, and that is a deeply unjust outcome. What can you actually do if you or someone you love is in this situation? Well, the first and most important step is to check whether you are entitled to pension credit. Do not assume you are not eligible. Do not let pride or embarrassment get in the way. This is money you are entitled to. You can call the pension credit claim line on 0800 99 1234. It is free to call, and the lines are open Monday to Friday. You can also apply online through the government's website, or you can ask a relative or friend to help you do so. Many local councils also have welfare rights teams or benefits advisors who can help you check what you are entitled to and assist with the application process, completely free of charge. Charities like Age UK and Citizens Advice are also brilliant resources. They have knowledgeable advisors who can go through your circumstances with you and make sure you are not missing out on anything. If you are worried about a parent, grandparent, neighbor, or friend who is elderly and may be struggling financially, please have a gentle and sensitive conversation with them about this. It can feel intrusive to talk about money, particularly with older generations who tend to keep their financial affairs very private. But framing it as looking out for their rights rather than their charity can help. You might say something like, "I read that a lot of people your age are actually entitled to extra money that they do not know about. Would you mind if we just had a look together to make sure you are not missing out?" That kind of approach tends to land much better than suggesting that someone might be in financial difficulty. It is also worth checking the state pension forecast for anyone who has not yet reached state pension age to make sure they are on track for the full amount. You can do this through the government's Check Your State Pension Service online. If there are gaps in your national insurance record, it may be worth considering whether voluntary contributions would be worthwhile to plug those gaps and increase your eventual pension. The rules around this have changed in recent years, so it is worth getting up-to-date advice specific to your situation. For those who are already receiving the basic state pension and are frustrated by this gap, there is also the question of campaigning and advocacy. Organizations like Age UK, the National Pensioners Convention, and various other pensioner advocacy groups have been raising awareness of this two-tier system for years. Writing to your local MP, joining or supporting these organizations, and sharing information about this issue with other people in your community all contribute to the pressure on government to address what many people see as a fundamentally unfair situation. The government has shown through policies like the triple lock that pensioner votes matter, and a coordinated, sustained campaign from the pensioner community and their families can and does influence policy. There are also people who believe that the long-term solution is to merge the two pension systems into a single, unified state pension that everyone receives equally, regardless of when they retired. Some policy experts have proposed a form of transitional arrangement that would gradually bring the basic state pension in line with the new state pension over a period of years, funded either through general taxation or through adjusted national insurance contribution arrangements. The cost of such a measure would be significant, but supporters argue that the moral case is overwhelming, and that the long-term economic benefits of reducing poverty among older pensioners, including reduced pressure on the NHS and social care system, should be factored into the calculation. Whatever your political views, it is very hard to argue against the basic principle that two people who have worked for the same number of years, paid the same national insurance contributions, and now have the same financial needs should not receive dramatically different amounts from the state purely because one of them happened to retire a few years before the other. That is not a partisan point. It is a question of basic fairness. And it is a question that affects hundreds of thousands of real people who are living with the consequences of this gap every single day. In summary, what we have here is a situation where over 75s on the old basic state pension are receiving up to £2,932 less per year than those who retired under the new state pension system introduced in 2016. This gap is structural. It is widening every year thanks to the mechanics of the triple lock, and it is being compounded by the loss of universal benefits like the winter fuel payment. Too many of the people affected are not claiming pension credit, the main benefit that could help close this gap, either because of stigma, complexity, or simple lack of awareness. And the DWP has not done nearly enough to proactively identify and reach out to those missing out. If you take nothing else away from this video, please take this. Check whether you or someone you know might be entitled to pension credit. Call 0800-99-1234 or contact Age UK or Citizens Advice. Do not leave money on the table that you have every right to receive. This is not charity. This is the system working as it should for the people who built this country and spent a lifetime contributing to it. You deserve every penny you are entitled to, and we owe it to each other to make sure nobody is left behind simply because they did not know to ask. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this helpful, please do share it with anyone you know who might be affected, a parent, a grandparent, a neighbor, or a friend. And if you have any questions or experiences you would like to share, please leave them in the comments below. We read every single one.